What's going on, guys? Happy Tuesday. Today I want to talk to you guys about this is what I want to talk to you guys about. You know, the younger generation don't have guidance. I feel this would be a good topic. Young people today, like my generation of people in my age range is people who was born in the late 80s to the early 90s. I got a cousin who was born in 93. He's 32 now. That's my generation of people. Anybody that was born, I would say late 80s, early 90s, we all in our 30s now. Like a lot of these youngsters that's in their early, like a lot of these youngsters that's teenagers, a lot of these people that's in their 20s now, like from, I would say like 21, 22, 23, I feel like people that's in their late 20s, they probably had some kind of guidance, but I'm really targeting the youngsters. You know, I say people that's like in their mid to late 20s, they probably had some kind of guidance more than likely. But what I'm targeting is these youngsters, these youngsters, like young people that's in middle school, high school, young people that's like 20. I would say from 20 to 20. I say from 20 to 24. You know, the new generation of youngsters coming up, they don't have no guidance nowadays. You know, um, you know, they not even raised by their grandparents. Like a lot of us, and I know you guys can relate. People that's in their 30s now. A lot of us, even if our parents split, a lot of us were raised by our grandparents. My grandparents raised me. You know, a lot of youngsters today, they don't have no guidance from nobody. Nobody. And it's sad, man. Like, this is why a lot of these youngsters are messing up their life. This is why a lot of these youngsters are going to prison forever. They ending up in the graveyard because they don't have nobody to give them no kind of guidance. They don't have nobody to teach them nothing. Like, you got to have somebody in your life that's teaching you something. Like, my mother was a hater. you know um, that's why she never had nothing good to say about my grandparents, but my grandparents did a lot for me growing up, and they instilled a lot in me. My grandfather had arthritis, so it was only so much he could do, but my grandparents instilled a lot of good qualities in me. They did. A lot of times, a lot of the wisdom that I quote on camera, it's not me that's quoting that. That's stuff that my grandparents instilled in me, and I regurgitate a lot of things that my father has told me. Um, I used to think that my dad was a little too blunt and too straightforward with me and my stepbrother, but he was just being real. Because the world is not gonna pacify you. The world is gonna give it to you raw and uncut. So you might as well have parents that's giving it to you raw and uncut. But a lot of these youngsters nowadays, even if it's not your parents that's giving you wisdom, a lot of these youngsters nowadays, they don't even have their grandparents. I thank God that I had my grandparents growing up, who instilled a lot of things in me. A lot of these youngsters, they don't have no kind of guidance, none whatsoever. And this is why, they're on a bad path in life. And a lot of parents, I believe, have gotten lenient today because it's so expensive, man. My mother's roommating with people. It's expensive to have your own today. You know, this is why I tell people better get an RV. That's the best way to go. Like an apartment gonna break your behind in half. It was a young female. I think she was about maybe 27, 28. She told me she and her sister paying almost $1,900 in this area. This is a nice suburban area. They're paying almost 1,900 for a 2-bedroom apartment. That is asinine. That is insane. Look at how expensive everything is. Like, see, parents, you know, they could put their kids out long time ago. Like my father told me when he and my uncle were coming up, they had to be out at 18. But they were youngsters back in the 80s. Like, it's a different time now. Like, life is really expensive nowadays. And unless you got making six figures at least, it's going to be very hard to survive. But a lot of these youngsters, man, they don't have no guidance. And I feel that's the problem with the new generation. See, my generation, we weren't perfect, but we had some kind of guidance too. You know, people that was, born in the late 80s, early 90s. I feel like we had some kind of guidance. Can I get a witness? Leave your comments if you in my generation. If you was born in the late 80s, early 90s, we all in our 30s now. I feel we had some kind of guidance as we were coming up. But these youngsters nowadays, they don't have no guidance whatsoever. They don't have nobody teaching them nothing. They don't have nobody implementing no real wisdom in them. And that's why they're lost. I'm preaching now. I'm preaching. Like, I at least had my grandparents coming up. My mother talks so negatively about my grandparents, but they tried. And my mother was always taking me over to my grandparents when I was a kid. So, I mean, at least I had some kind of guidance coming up. But these youngsters, they don't have no guidance from nobody. They don't have nobody instilling nothing in them. They don't have nobody leading them towards success. They don't have nobody that's doing that. And it is your parents' job to lead you towards success. My father always said, if your parents are not leading you towards success, they failed you as a parent. Because it is your parents are your first teacher, and it's their job to ensure that you become successful. But these youngsters, a lot of the parents are young too. That's another thing. A lot of the parents are young, and a lot of the parents are just they're not equipping their children to succeed, And the inflation nowadays doesn't make things any better, But you guys leave your comments. Let me know what you think about today's generation, the young generation today, because I feel like even you guys that's in maybe like your mid to late 20s, I'm pretty sure you guys had some kind of guidance growing up as well. But a lot of these youngsters that's teenagers, youngsters that's like I would say from 20 to 24, a lot of these youngsters that's coming up now, they don't have no guidance, I don't believe. And if they're getting any guidance, I'm sure it's from the streets. And you could tell these, youngsters that grew up in the streets, It's very important that children be guided in the right direction and children be given proper wisdom. Because without proper wisdom, that is going to lead to a child's demise. It's going to lead to a child's demise. And I truly believe that is the problem with the younger generation coming up now. A lot of the parents are just not teaching their kids nothing. They're not preparing them to be successful. And then you got a lot of parents that's enabling their children. Like, I understand that it's expensive out here, but you got some parents that's probably gonna let their kids stay at home forever, and they'll never get out on their own and be self-sufficient and know what it is to have that real adult independence, and I feel like youngsters nowadays, they got, Lyft, they got Uber taking them places. When we was teenagers, Uber was just coming on the scene. It wasn't popping, they didn't have Uber and Lyft like they got now, so a lot of the youngsters, a lot of these youngsters, they don't realize they got it easy nowadays. All the social media platforms. I mean, teenagers got it made today. They got all the things that we didn't have when we was teenagers. When we was teenagers, MySpace just hit the scene. Social media was just getting started by the time we was teens, early 2000s, like that's when MySpace was coming on the scene. But I feel like the young generation could be, they could be further advanced, because they got a lot of things that we didn't have. They have a lot of opportunities, and they got a lot of, this technology. They got a lot of things that we didn't have when we was teens, you know. And I just feel that the problem with the new generation is they're just not being, they're just not, this is from my perspective. You guys let me know if you see different. The younger generation, they just not getting the guidance that they need. You know, they don't have nobody teaching them anything. You know, that can be that could be a big detriment to you when you don't have no one teaching you nothing. You know, like the old saying goes, "An idle mind is the devil's workshop." And a lot of these parents don't even have no idea what their children are doing, with who their kids are involved with. A lot of these parents are just totally lost. But you guys, let me know your thoughts on this. Even though my mother and father split, at least I got guidance from somewhere. My grandparents, I got wisdom from my father as well. But because usually when a man and a woman divorce, it's never the man who files for divorce. It's always the woman. You know. So that's just something to think about. But you guys let me know what you think about this topic. What do you think the problem with the new generation is? Because I can definitely see a change from when I was a teenager and when I was in my 20s, to now. I can definitely see changes in the youngsters of today. I mean, their mentality and their outlook on life is totally different from our outlook on life and the mindset that we had. These youngsters, they on a different frequency. But you guys make sure you comment, rate, subscribe. Talk to you soon. Peace.